Good morning, John Carswell coming to you on Tuesday of Holy Week. I don't know about you, but I've been thinking lately, a primary question is, how is this going to end? What is the exit strategy for this isolation period that we're in? And when are we going to go back to normal? Of course, the answer to the first two questions is we really don't know. This is something unprecedented, and we really don't know what the best way to finish it is. But the third question is, when are we going to go back to normal? And of course, the answer to that question is simply never. We are never going to go back to normal because the normal that we once knew is no longer here, that everything has changed in a very fundamental way. Now, there's a great story in the Bible about two people whose normal was turned upside down and how an encounter with Jesus Christ made that very different for them. And what strikes me about these two people is both their similarities and their differences. Now, the story takes place in Mark chapter 5, and it picks up when Jesus has returned from a journey across the Sea of Galilee. Now, by this point in his ministry, he'd become quite a celebrity, so there was a crowd of people waiting for him, and two people in particular. He was immediately accosted by a fellow named Jairus, who was a synagogue ruler, a prominent social member of the community. But he was in a desperate state. His little daughter was sick and on the verge of death, and he'd come to ask Jesus if he'd come to the house and heal his daughter. Now, on the way there was a second story within this story, and that's the story of this unnamed woman who had an issue of blood, which means she had some sort of internal injury. And she too had reached a point of desperation, although her social status was completely different from Jairus. She was a woman, which would have meant that she was very low on the social ladder. She was poor. All of her money had been spent on doctors trying to get well, obviously to no avail. And thirdly, the issue of blood that she had would have prevented her from taking part in the religious life of the community. So she was in quite a state, but she was a woman of faith. And she came to Jesus and she said to herself, if I can just reach out and touch the edge of his cloak, then I'll be well. And as this crowd moved forward onto Jairus' house, there she was in the middle of all these people, and she pressed her way forward and she reached out and touched Jesus. Now, Jesus knew that something had happened, so he made everyone stop, and he asked, well, who touched me? And his disciples were like, well, there's hundreds of people that have touched you. What do you mean? And he spied this woman, and he said, daughter, your faith has healed you. For just as she had touched him, instantly she was healed. Now, as I said, these two folks are very different in the sense that they had a very different social status. The Jairus would have been at the top of the ladder, and unfortunately the woman would have been at the bottom. But their respective crisis had brought them and made them equals. It brought them both to the same state of desperation, and they both came to Jesus as a result. Now, the same thing is going on with this coronavirus. It is the great equalizer. This virus does not look for rich people or doesn't prey on poor people over rich people. It doesn't look for celebrities or people like, the rest of us, the punters. It just looks for a warm pair of lungs in which it can replicate itself. And in that sense, we're all on a level playing field. So as we do find an exit strategy, an end game to this isolation, and I'm sure that one day we will, there's some things about the normal that we're experiencing right now that I hope will take place in whatever the new normal looks like. Things like a gratitude for those who are servants on the front line, not only in the hospital but in the service industries, saying thank you to people who are bringing us food and picking up our rubbish on a weekly basis. An abiding concern for the poor and the vulnerable and the lonely in the community. A sense of our connection to neighbors, not only neighbors right next door to us, but neighbors around the world, in Brazil and in China and India and in America. We're all joined together by this thing, and I hope that sense of international unity will carry forward. But I also hope that there'll be a revival or a rediscovery or a renewal in faith in Jesus, that this is a time like no other, when we have not only the time but the opportunity and really the need to seek salvation, to seek hope, to seek healing from an outside source. Now, my prayer for you is that you'll find, as Jairus did and the woman did, that when you're at the end of your rope, that there is where we meet Jesus Christ. And I pray you'll find his blessings today and every day as we move forward. If you like, you can pray the prayer that's on the screen, and I do hope you'll join me. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.